We are so close to the launch of Planet Coaster 2, and I'm honoured to say that Frontier have given me an advanced copy of the game to play ahead of the release. Frontier, thank you so much. Now this means three things. One, I get to do a proper Let's Play series of Planet Coaster 2, which started today as well, by the way. Two, I finally get to show you everything in the game without any time restrictions. And three, I can start work on the masses of tutorial videos that you guys are going to ask me for. So just to confirm, we're not being paid by Frontier, so our views here are allowed to be our own. And I bet you're here because you just want the good, the bad, and the ugly ahead of release, right? Don't worry, guys. I got you covered, my friends. So as always, we're going to start with the good stuff. And first up, we've got the queue line tool. It's been updated. It's not perfect yet, but we can finally do cattle pen queues. Now, I'm going to talk about the bad bits a little bit later, but the tool feels, I don't know, easier to use than the demo version that we played in September. And the whole pathing system itself seems to have had some rework. For example, we've now got the direction arrows to show us which way the guests are going. And next up, the UI has been tweaked so that for the most part, when you're in the build and scenery menus, they actually now persist. There's no more having to go through so many menus to select the next piece in place. The UI isn't perfect, there's still a few flaws in it, but we're going to do more on that later. This was the deal breaker for me, selfishly speaking of course, but the fact that this is fixed, perfect. And another thing that's been fixed is the advanced move options. We can now once again select your next piece whilst in the previous advanced move placement and have that next piece persist in the location of the previous item. Amazing. And it's dark, as in pitch black inside buildings, and this is a massive difference from the demo version we played where it was only partially dark. This is a huge step and a massive win for the ray tracing. Dark rides are going to be awesome. And there are many tools that are going to make creating a park so much easier than the original game. The bulldoze tool is really powerful. The scenery brush places masses of scenery easy, and you've got options to avoid or collide with paths as well. That's nice. And the path tool just makes plazas so much easier. And I didn't think they could get better, but it seems like water and terrain have been upgraded again. They now look even more awesome than they did in September. The terrain textures are actually textured, and the water-based stuff actually moves. And this is probably the most notable one. The game runs incredibly. It's smooth, it's responsive, and the autosaves don't take 10 minutes to complete. Mine was actually set to 3 minutes, and I didn't even realise it until I found it in the settings. So it looks amazing. I've said it before, but really, the foliage, the water, the rocks, everything, it's leagues better than the original. There's also lots of zoo baked into the game, and this shows. It's a massive step up graphically from the original. Another thing that I like is even after you've set up and started to play a Sandbox park, you are able to go in and change and edit the settings easily. So if your park happens to go under because you spent all your ice cream money on Viking shields, then you could just go into the settings and turn money off and your park is saved. Or if you get annoyed with the electricity and water settings, you can just go in and turn them off without any effort at all. The game, I don't know, feels quite flexible. And on the note of those facilities, they've had a bit of a UX passed on them. Things are so much clearer to place down now. It's not as confusing as it once was, and we know the horror show that I had in my play. And now we just need to find a way to make pretty backstage areas. And the new rides and coasters are a significant upgrade to the original. The Ultimax multi-dimension coaster, that's great. It represents a massive step forward for all of the possibilities in a game like this. The ideas of transfer, trick and drop tracks, they were a dream for us within the original game, so we've now got them. The possibilities are literally endless. You guys are going to come up with so many amazing creations. I also found out that guest tolerances don't just extend to food, they also have a tolerance for queue lengths, scenery, ride stats like speeds, g-forces and height. There's actually quite a bit built into it, guys. Guests ride the pirate ship. Do I need to say anything else? The smooth coaster tool in Planet Coaster 2 is perfect. Actually, the whole coaster building tool, aside from the confusing AI, is so good. A coaster that would have taken me 4 or 5 hours in the original was botched out in a 30-minute Let's Play episode, and the coaster camera is also decent. Even your previously jankier elements of a coaster, they're all smooth now. This is a bit of a weird one, but art shapes make a return. I mean, it's the unsung hero of any park. I've used them in so many different situations, but they now scale as well. And I don't really know why I expected there to still be a palette of different sizes rather than having the one that you resize, but hey, they're back. Let's just celebrate that. Oh, guys, the weird queue line entrance bollards are gone. We don't have to cover them up with boxes anymore. I mean, not that I ever did, but you know. The pool depth transitions are actually really nice. You can now make proper sloping beaches if you're into that kind of thing. And this makes wave machines operate so much better. The railings on paths are no longer attached to the path texture that you use, so the railings are now selectable separately to the texture that you choose, and this is going to unlock a number of combinations that we never had before. So your Planet Coaster skills for the most part are transferable into Planet Coaster 2. For example, if you know how to put a building together, then you just need to learn the new pieces. The rest is all the same. And if you know how to build a coaster, you just need to learn the new UI. And if you know how to lay out a park, well, that's not changed much either. Get ready to play a still addictive game. I found myself coming away from the game wanting to go in for more. And also, when I was recording the Let's Play, half hour just flew by. I never found myself with nothing to do. There's no real downtime in the game, and it really does take your attention, and I like that. And the customization within Planet Coaster 2 is massive. This is going to create all sorts of new dimensions of things to design. The height angles of pathways, the plaza tools, the new pieces that we're using. In some aspects, we've had a lot of barriers removed to creating awesome things, but in other ways, some have been added. And that brings us quite nicely onto the stuff that's not so good, because you know I like to be balanced in my views, and there are some things that you should probably be aware of. And first up, those staff buildings aren't decorated inside. Now, as you know, this is not a deal breaker, but it's just a real shame they didn't take the opportunity to do it, especially as they did it in Zoo. It just feels like, I don't know, things are missing without that decoration. So I don't know if this was just me or if it was the game, but the ride condition, power and water is needy AF. I had a few mechanic bugs, that didn't help, but your power generators tell you that they can generate 120 units of power, but rarely do they, because your mechanics just can't inspect them quick enough. And then if one does break down, the absence of directing power to a specific ride throws everything into chaos, because the game goes, you don't have enough power for the area so everything closes, rather than you have enough power for these things but not these things. It freaks out your entire park. Like I say, this might just be a product of a game bug. Some coasters have got the wrong restraints, and I don't really know why. They existed in Planet Coaster 1 and they don't in Planet Coaster 2. And the correct restraint exists on a different coaster type of the same manufacturer. I don't get it. So the water slides, whilst they're easy to build, they are a little bit janky. They feel a little bit, I don't know, off. Well, I mean, we don't have perfectly flat bottoms for our slides, and I can see why this might have been done, and for the casual player it probably isn't going to matter, but if you are dealing with realism, this might bug you. It's not on the ugly list for me, because I can deal with it. And that's my next point. This game looks and plays really well from a distance, but the level of realism and detail included from the original seems to be missing in the sequel. The sequel feels, I don't know, different on a subconscious level. There are parts that are incredibly detailed and look amazing. Look at the Ultimax interdimensional coaster and the elements that they've included on that. But other parts of the game have lost some of their baked-in realism charm that they had. You know, like the wrong restraints on coasters. Is it unforgivable? The park area feels a little bit small to work in. They are certainly smaller than the original were, and they seem to be smaller than the original when they were in early access. Now, I'm assuming this is down to all the calculations that are needed for the AI and the pathing. Of course, the bigger the area, the more the resource draw. Now, the reason that I've put this in the bad and not the ugly is because there's an entry in the ugly that's going to make this seem small fry. And now we're back to the UI, because when you load into the coaster or the rides menu, it will always default to blueprints. As someone that's going to rarely use blueprints and not having the ability to turn this off, that's quite annoying. This adds extra clicks to something that's just so niche. It's going to get annoying over time. So you can't remove curbs from queues, and the textures suck because of the Planet Coaster motif. And you know me, I love a good custom queue, but so far there is no ability to remove the curbs from the queue paths. You can remove the railings, but not the curbs. Now this creates a little bit of an awkward problem if you're going to do cattle pen queues, which you're going to see in the Let's Play. Now there are a few workarounds, but this is definitely a Windows as Wall style workaround. I'm really going to miss curbless queues. But all of those pale in comparison to the stuff we've got on the ugly list, because there are some really ugly things that might be deal breakers for you, possibly even for me. And in the interests of full disclosure, we are going to start with the ugliest. There is a 6,000 guest park cap, that's it. 6,000. It's not liftable, and it's not something that's in the pipeline to change either. Now, I understand why this is there, so we don't overload consoles when we pass the park to them, but Sandbox parks, as far as I know, are not passable. So why are us PC players being constrained to console constraints in Sandbox? Some of us are running pretty powerful PCs that can handle it. Secondly, strictly speaking, there is no night play. You have the ability to have nighttime by changing the camera settings, and you can change when sunset is, but there is no night play. Your park is open 8 AM till 8 PM, and the hours outside of that don't exist at all. Your park is always open, your guests don't leave at the end of the day just rolls on from 8 PM to 8 AM. And as I said, the saving grace is that you can change when sunset is or the camera settings, but missing 12 hours is just gross. Now all this means that you can't change your operating hours, but you can control whether your park is open or closed. Ride pads, enough said. The user interface and the user experience is still a mood killer, and you are going to see this right the way through the Let's Play over the first couple of days. There are some seriously questionable decisions that have been made with this, and I sometimes wonder whether they spent so long designing the game that they forgot to actually play it. There's some things in this early access release that I strongly feel wouldn't be in there if they just played the game as a player, or gave it to us sooner to supply some feedback. It's better than our original playthrough in September, but it's still so frustrating at times because you just get lost in a loop of menus all the time. You just don't know how to get out of it. So, the annoyance with the lack of consistency with the building pieces sticks with us in Planet Coaster 2. While there is some consistency, there doesn't seem to be the same palette of building pieces with each theme. For example, the Viking theme in the version I played has a wall piece for 4 meters but no roof piece to go with it. And I really wish Frontier used a minimum palette requirement model when designing these pieces. Every theme, for example, should have a 1, 2 and 4 meter wall, pitched walls in 1, 2 and 4 meters, and roofs to accompany them, and so on. All it needs is a consistent palette and design. And there are, by the way, a few things that I can't review ahead of time because they're just not meant to be working yet. Remember, we're playing this 2 weeks before release. For example, aside from the fact that I have no friends, the franchise past the park element isn't fully working yet, and nor does the Frontier Workshop, so it would be unfair for me to rate these now. I also can't tell you what it's like to pass a park from console to PC yet, and I also can't comment about the performance of the game in larger parks because it's too early for that. You need to build one first. Okay, so it's time for a summary then, because I've now played 24 hours of the game. What do I think? And it's going to sound like I'm glazing Frontier here, but I promise I'm not. Some of you had really high expectations of what a sequel should be, when in reality, sequels are usually games that contain elements of the original and then they build upon them. We've seen this problem before with The Sims 4, City Skylines 2, Transport Fever, and we're going to see this again when the eventual Planet Zoo 2 comes out. And the initial launch of the sequel feels like it's a rollback because it doesn't benefit from the 4 or 5 years of development. Planet Coaster 2 needs a little bit of refining, but it's the sort of refining that happens within that development cycle. Remember, neither Planet Coaster or Planet Zoo were perfect when they were first launched, and hell, even City Skylines 1 didn't have nighttime. And so the question that comes off the back of that now is whether the bad and ugly list is insurmountable, and I think the answer for at least at the moment is no. You can forgive the UI choices, the guest cap, the restraints not being correct, the stations not being overhauled, the pieces being limited and missing, when you at least have a good game to play. And you do have to make a lot of excuses and exceptions for the game, but ultimately the building blocks are all there. There is enough of a sequel to move the original on, and I completely disagree with the opinion that this should have been a DLC or an expansion. This is way beyond that kind of territory. I like it, and I can see a lot of potential with it. Ultimately, the question that you need to ask yourselves is whether you'd rather play the original or play games like Parkitect or even Roller Coaster Tycoon World. That, my friends, is on you. But you've heard my thought processes. Now let's go and see the Let's Play that drives all of this opinion. I'll see you there in a moment.